Today's video is going to be for all of you guys who are perhaps studying liberal arts right now at universities, or for all of you guys who are perhaps in high school and you want to study something like linguistics, philosophy, or literature at university because you find this discipline inherently fascinating, or if you're attracted to certain aspects of the discipline, whatever your reason is. But today I simply want to address this very important question of why is it dangerous to romanticize these pursuits? Why is it dangerous to bring up these such ludicrous expectations when you're heading to the field? Why is there a danger to buying too much into the mainstream representations of these disciplines? For example, you see a lot of representation of liberal arts or studying literature, philosophy, or history at universities. You see a lot of these posts and curated feeds on the literary experience. You know, I'm a philosophy student here. Here I am drinking a cup of coffee, you know, including my own content. Is my aesthetics seducing you into study some of these fields? And what is the danger of that seduction? What is the danger of, you know, overly romanticizing these disciplines? So that's the topic of this video essay. So before we dive into that entire train of thoughts or train of arguments, I want to tell you a little bit about this French philosopher by the name of Jacques Derrida. So Jacques Derrida was basically responsible for founding the philosophical movement called deconstruction. So as a very simple, that's such a reductionistic explanation on deconstruction. So deconstruction is basically a philosophical movement that pulls apart the inherent meanings of texts. So when we read a piece of literature, or when we read a piece of poem or text or a scientific treatise, there's a sense that we're looking for something inherently solid behind the text. We're looking for that objective meaning. We're looking for some, you know, where through signifiers, we're trying to find out objectively, you know, the thing that is like it, that the sign is signifying, right? We're trying to find some inherent interpretation to literary works. We're trying to find some inherent interpretation of cornerstones of Western philosophy. We're trying to find some objective interpretation of something, or within paintings, within art. So this is what Derrida is basically trying to deconstruct. And he basically went through this whole survey of many of the key literary texts within the Western intellectual traditions, and he systematically dissolved these inherent readings. He systematically went through a very rigorous process of philosophical reasoning, and he went ahead and deconstructed these very inherent meanings within these texts. And that's a gross simplification. If you want to read more about Derrida, I'll link a few articles below that you can basically, you know, complete your understanding of Derrida. But in a sense, here's the danger of popularizing something as complicated as deconstruction. So in 2002, Derrida was asked by an American journalist whether deconstruction as a philosophical method was a parallel to the TV sitcom Seinfeld. Because if you've seen Seinfeld, it's basically like this ironic portrayal of these guys, and then these ironic forms of storytelling and these very fractured ways of presenting a narrative that, you know, that the journalist basically asked Derrida, you know, is there a parallel between deconstruction and how Seinfeld was shot? You know, is there a parallel between these two fractured ways of regarding meaning, regarding texts, regarding storytelling? And Derrida basically chuckled, and basically he said to the journalist, you know, deconstruction, as I know it, does not produce any sitcoms. And for those people who believe that Seinfeld is what deconstruction is, I would advise them to just turn off their TVs and sit down, do their homework, and read. So that's basically the dangers of representation in mainstream culture. That's the dangers of the popular media seducing you into thinking that a thing is a specific way. But in reality, it's actually not that way. And when it applies to academic concepts, academic pursuits, and the liberal arts as a discipline, it could run us into a lot of problems. So I recently had, towards the end of my semester, I had a lot of gaps in my schedule. And I had a conversation with a first-year literature student. So during a study break, we got a cup of coffee, and we started talking about literature. I started talking about what I wanted to do in my postgraduate studies, and she talked about what she wanted to do with literature. But at the end of that coffee session, she basically said to me that she was ready to drop out. And I basically stood there and I'm like, but this is only your first year of studying, you know. This is only your first year of engaging with the discipline. You know, what made you want to drop out? And she said to me, well, I think the classes are putting me to sleep. I think university is not the best way to get into literature. And I just don't inherently think that this method is going to make me appreciate literature. So then it was at that moment when I realized that there is a gap between how literature is portrayed in these under these buzz terms like dark academia, light academia, cottagecore, the modern romantic. Under these buzzwords, these representations are inherently erroneous. They're inherently not the real thing that you'll be tackling when you're engaging with these pursuits at universities. Now, according to P.F. Strawson, so Strawson's a British linguist, philosopher, who developed many amazing theories or amazing responses to some of the pragmatic theories of language, where he basically wrote in this incredible essay called Why Philosophy, he basically said that the reasonably diligent study of the liberal arts over a period of years, under the guidance of an experienced tutor, will develop in you a critical and skeptical habit of mind, which will be of service to you in assessing whatever you hear or read. So the key word here is rigorous, and a key word there is sort of the systematic process under the guidance of a tutor or an experienced professor to guide you through this process of research, of citation, of spending endless hours in the library, doing research, tracking down every little thing that you've referenced, and sort of through that process of rigorously engaging with a discipline, rigorously regarding texts, or rigorously reading through a historical account and somehow drawing a lot of meaning behind it. That is the process of exercising your brain. That is the process of exercising a sense of academic integrity. And that's the process of, in a sense, you developing your brain into an intelligent machine. You developing your brain into a brain that could take on whatever information that's presented to it and make some coherent sense out of it. It's, in a sense, the ability to distinguish nonsense from principles. It's, in a sense, this very incredible ability to think critically, which I think is such an undervalued skill nowadays. So I'm currently at the tail end of my bachelor's, and one of the key realizations that I had was that I still virtually know absolutely nothing about my discipline. So I virtually know nothing about this French major that I'm in. I virtually know nothing about literature. And the knowledge work sort of does that to you. After you've trained yourself to think in a specific way, it's just going to open your brain up to all these possibilities that you've never considered before. And the process of pursuing those new possibilities becomes the task of research, becomes the task of pursuing, post-grad studies, of pursuing these engaging with these very rigorous forms of academic disciplines. And the next problem with romanticizing liberal arts, after we've tackled the problem of this, this very big gap between expectation versus reality, because these expectations, these representations, they don't include any aspects of rigor. They don't include any aspects of this. Students don't exactly expect rigor or boredom, or they have to learn all of these academic principles or all of these research skills. When they don't expect that, and they have all these representations that they've harvested from social media, and when they carry that into their studies, it's, in a sense, just going to discourage them from the very beginning. So after that, the second problem here is that influencers on the internet, these representations of the liberal arts on the internet, whatever you've read on the internet, commentaries on philosophical works on the internet, or any educational videos that you've watched on the internet, including my own videos, influencers are not professors. Let me repeat that. Influencers are not professors. So if we confuse the two, if we confuse the two of them, if we confuse popularization of ideas with, the inherent, the meat of the idea or the inherent understanding of the idea, then we run into the problem of what Gustave Flaubert coined as received ideas. So Flaubert had a really beautiful book called A Dictionary of Received Ideas. So he basically criticized, at the time it was the newspaper, now we have all forms of social media, the newspaper, in a sense, dumbed down, or had, in a sense, armed stupidity and given authority to fools through this process of infiltrating the popular consciousness and, in a sense, instilling these these partial readings of the actual ideas within the popular consciousness. And they've instilled these very limited readings of these otherwise really complicated concepts into a very short and succinct form. And that's going to circulate around the discourse. That's what's going to circulate around the social media sphere. So that entire process of circulation is, in a sense, the dangers of us just taking ideas and running with them without thinking too much about them. And we run the danger of never going anywhere clever with these ideas. And we run the danger of misreadings. And what's really interesting here is that the misreadings of a book or the misreadings of a specific philosophical idea or historical period, the misreadings of for example, a passage in literature, although they are misreadings from an academic point of view, they could actually take on values of truth when we put them in a social media context. Because in social media right now, there's a shift away from the content of presentation to the personality of the presenter. There's a shift away from the value of the ideas to how the idea is portrayed in media. So there's a grand shift away from where the idea came from, where is the source of the idea, to the aesthetics, the personality of the presenter, and the sort of charms projected by the presenter. So if you're watching this video right now, I want you to do a very quick exercise here. I'm presenting things to you right now, but these opinions or these hearsays that I'm giving to you right now, these opinions that I'm voicing to you, given the color scheme of this video, given how I'm dressed, given how I'm presenting these ideas, and given my background, that's going to create an illusion of authority. So what I'm presenting here is based upon some of those things that I've read, some of the educated guesses that I'm making, that I'm sort of like presenting to you. But realize that this entire exercise is still me presenting with my sort of my understanding of the problem of romanticizing liberal arts. It's in a sense just me presenting it to you as an influencer, as a person who I don't have much authority in academia, because I'm still a third-year literature student. I don't have much, I have no publication records. So whatever I'm presenting here, they're only hearsays. They're here for entertainment values. I'm presenting it to you not because I want you to take them very seriously. This is simply me articulating what I'm thinking about and presenting them in a form of a video. And all these elements that are surrounding me, the little light in the background, the sports jacket, and this sort of like the way that I'm presenting this content, all of that is a mere construction. This is an illusion of academic integrity. Whereas in fact, if you actually want to read some of the ideas that I'm talking about, if you actually want to dive into the discipline, you have to realize that you still have to go back to the original source. So after class one day, I asked Derrida's biographer. So Peter Salmon is a brilliant biographer. He used to live in Melbourne, and now he's running a winter course on Derrida. And so after class one day, I basically asked Peter Salmon, what are your opinions on, how do I go about tackling Derrida without losing my mind? Because Derrida, as we know, is notoriously difficult to read. How do we tackle his ideas without, losing track of his complicated arguments? And Peter Salmon basically said, well, I would recommend you to engage directly with the source text. I would recommend you to directly read Derrida, because most of the critics of Derrida, most of the citations surrounding Derrida as a thinker, most of the criticisms and then most of the academic articles, a quick introduction of Derrida, they're in a sense blatant misreadings of Derrida. He basically said to me, there's a lot of rubbish by critics who had actually never bothered to read him because he's too difficult to read. So keep that in mind. Influencers are not professors. And if you really want to get to the root of these ideas, that's why I love listing recommended readings for you guys. I don't want you guys to take my words as they are. And I don't want you guys to sort of run with popular conceptions of ideas or misreadings of ideas and thinking that you've really got it. I want you to get off this video and read some of the listed readings if you really want to understand some of the concepts that I'm talking about. So that's in a sense the second problem. Influencers are not professors, and this entire construction here is luring you into thinking that we somehow have authority over these subjects, but well, in fact, we don't. Well, in fact, we're just presenting hearsay and opinions. And the line between opinions and hearsay should not be blurred. The line between the representation of these disciplines are, in fact, very different from the reality of these disciplines. And you need to be careful when you're engaging with content surrounding liberal arts on the internet, because the internet is one of the most democratized places ever in terms of digital information, in terms of education, in terms of knowledge. So you, in a sense, ideally, you want to cross-reference my videos with something that you've read from the Encyclopedia of Philosophy online. You want to cross-reference these sources, and you can point out my mistakes. You can point out something that you don't quite agree with, and source and reference other YouTubers with other articles. And through this process of referencing and through this process of like carefully checking your biases, that's how you actually get a deeper understanding of this entire topic of the liberal arts. So to conclude here, the real work of engaging with the liberal arts, the real meat of it, is very much many hours of unglamorous work. So to research for a video like this, there are probably many hours of me tracing down quotes, tracing down citations, trying to really pack a punch in my arguments. That's, hours of just locking myself away in the library. That's hours of being alone. That's hours of just reading books and not going outside. It's hours of laboriously engaging with impenetrable texts when I was writing papers last semester. It's hours of unglamorously, with your tail between your legs, going up to a professor because you don't understand something. It's that entire ball of the liberal arts that is not represented on social media, that is not talked about. But in my personal opinion, that for me is the meat of the discipline. That for me is what you should learn to enjoy if you want to really engage with these ideas, with these theories, and with these otherwise life-transforming books that can save you a few decades of life experience. It is that process that you need to learn to enjoy. So embrace rigor, embrace solitude, embrace all of these things that a lot of people are afraid of embracing. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you an intelligent thinker. If you learn this process of cross-referencing, if you learn critical thinking, and I'll make more videos about how to think critically in the future. If you go through this entire process, what's going to happen is that your reality will never be the same ever again. After you've studied a philosophical thinker, your way of interpreting reality will never ever be the same ever again. But you first of all have to slog through this period where you feel like you're banging your head against the wall. You feel like nothing ever will make any sense. When you feel like you're really losing the grip on reality, you have to go through that entire laborious process. You have to go through the bureaucracies of academia. If you are studying literature or something else at university, you have to embrace these periods that are going to suck in order to arrive at a really satisfying conclusion, in order to arrive at very satisfying, the satisfying process of learning. And you have to dedicate many years to it, and you have to dedicate a lot of time to it, and a lot of lonely hours. So in a sense, my content is only doing a job of seducing you, piquing your interest in these subjects. But I'm not here giving you the truth. I'm not here just feeding truth to you. I'm not here trying to offer any objective opinions. All of my content are hearsay and useful considerations, but you shouldn't attach any weight behind them. And my job here, as a part of my YouTube channel, as a part of my entire Medium page article, is to seduce you, is to get you interested in pursuing these subjects. But you, as a student of the liberal arts, you have to do the heavy lifting of sitting down, reading the books, and doing your homework. That's all I have for today. Very long one, very information-packed one, and I hope you guys had enjoyed it, and I hope this video basically opened you up to new possibilities of what you can do with literature and philosophy and history, and this probably will restore some confidence in you, when you're studying liberal arts. So it's not always going to be sunshine and butterflies. It's not always going to be exciting, but just from my own personal experience, it's a very life-transforming thing. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment below, leave a like to this video, and if you want to support my work, I have a link to buy me a coffee. So you can buy me a coffee as a sort of form of support to this channel and to my Medium articles. And RC Waldun here, and I will see you in the next one.